are you? You're on mute. Or am I?
Can you hear me?
I can now.
I'm about to start. It's on record already, but like we like to be human. I've got me pinned though, so I don't think they'll be able to see you. And it's hit and miss about whether people come to these live or they don't come live. So we'll just see. But hi.
Just thought I'd pop along.
Welcome to the July Q&A. So what I will say at the start for people on the recording and those here live, hello, is that we're going to have a break of the Q&A calls in August. And we're also going to have a break from the podcast in August. I'm going to practice what I preach and have some time of not delivering a million things all of the time. So we will be back in September. So I have a couple of juicy questions today. And then if anybody else has got questions, they can ask them afterwards if we have time. So questions are, and this lady has been listening to my How to Take Care of Yourself class, which I think you've listened to as well, haven't you? And so her questions in relation to that class, and don't worry, I'll give people context if you haven't seen it, are about exercise and losing weight, but as separate things. So it says not as exercising to lose weight, but they're both the questions. So exercise is the first question that we're going to look at today. So this person wants to be able to do more exercise without overriding what they refer to as their frozen nervous system. Who said, I could easily use it to override, but I want to find ways to integrate more without it coming at a cost. Specifically, I want to add strength training and maybe 1 day a week of higher intensity cardio. The rest of the time, walking is good. What are your thoughts on how to do this well? So I think this is such a good question for people to consider and to think about. And so just to put it in context for everyone, when this person talks about having a frozen nervous system, I think what she means is, so when we do too much, or when we've got a lot on, or when we're experiencing burnout, or we can get overwhelmed. And the way that our body protects us in that overwhelmed state is that we go into more of a shutdown or a freeze state. And the things that I talk about in the How to Take Care of Yourself class is that in that state, that's the time when we don't want to be pushing ourselves. So we don't want to be doing like crazy exercise. We don't want to be doing crazy diets. And so what this person's saying is, but if I recognize that I'm in a frozen state, how can I still incorporate more exercise? And the short answer is, I would say don't. Because the more that you can really take care of yourself and allow yourself to rest and recover when you are in that state, the faster you will come out of it. Now, this is caveated with, and the person that's asked me this question knows a lot about this stuff, and we actually work together as well. But so a lot of us have an underlying freeze state within our nervous systems. So we've got things that have overwhelmed us in the past. And so there is this like chronic freeze sitting there. And we all basically just have to learn to live our lives around that. Like we can heal it and work through it, but most of us are just managing it and navigating it day to day, and as we do that healing work. But what I'm talking about here is those points in time where we just feel we're feeling overwhelmed, we're feeling foggy, we're feeling spaced out, we're feeling disconnected. Like we need all the energy that we can muster in those times to come out of those states. But even recognizing that you have an underlying chronic freeze position, on the days when you do feel more regulated and you do feel more energized and you do feel more capable, you may choose to incorporate some extra exercise. But what I say is you just have to go gently and you have to check in and just notice how it feels. And recognize that if you only get 100 units of energy a day and you decide to use 50 of them on exercise, it's not giving you a lot left for everything else that you want to do. And so you could do a little bit of weights, high intensity cardio. It's just going to take a lot out of you. So there is evidence that shows that things like very short bursts of sprints gives your, like, it depends what you're wanting it for, right? If it's for cardiovascular health, short bursts of like 30 or 60-second sprints followed by a 2-minute break and repeating that like 3 times. So you were doing a total of between 90 seconds and 3 minutes of all out exercise will give your heart what it needs. But I suspect because of the whole context of this question that there is some underlying of like, but the exercise is going to help me lose weight. And we just don't want to be pushing and doing extra things. So I'd just be interested for this person to reach out and let me know specifically why the higher intensity cardio. I get why the weight training, because as we get older, our muscle mass naturally declines. We want to maintain our muscle mass as much as we can. But come and let me know why the higher intensity cardio, and we can talk around that. But maybe like very short bursts of sprints. But just trust that the majority of the time, especially if you're in that frozen, overwhelmed state, a little bit of walking is enough. A little bit of stretching is enough. And then as your nervous system regulates, as you come out of that freeze state, then you can look at gently building in, okay, well, what happens if I do a weight training session? If I do a weight training session, what then happens to me for the rest of that day? How do I sleep that night? What do I notice the next day? Okay, well, actually, I notice that it gets to whatever time when I'm sort of crashing out a little bit. Or I did it once, I felt really energized, I felt really good, great. Then what happens if you do it once again the next week? And how do we build up and look at that? And so that is my answer to that. Really, if we're in the freeze state, gentle, heat, rest. And as an aside, I do this, I go off on tangents. As an aside, also what is pushing I need to do this kind of exercise? So like, what is underlying this need? Because I'll hold my hands up, I'd be in the same place, but it's because one of the ways that I deal with my various patterns and anxiety is to move and exercise. So it's also, what are we being called to look at? Like, essentially, what are we overriding with the exercise? What sits underneath? So that's just something else that you could explore. Okay, second question. Second question here is about losing weight. It says, I started this year with a goal to lose 40 pounds by July the 1st. So 40 pounds, UK people, just under 3 stone, people who are like working in those metrics. Instead, I have gained 10 pounds. I feel uncomfortable in my body and clothes. I'm confident that I am eating to silence my feelings. This person knows what's going on. I am eating to silence my feelings and calm my nervous system, and out of boredom and restlessness past the point of being full. I eat to check out. I think it's how I transition from sympathetic to freeze. So sympathetic is that high fight or flight, feeling stressed, feeling anxious. And then the freeze, as we've just discussed, is that dull, checked out, more kind of depression, burnout state. I have this thought that if I could just really listen to my body and stop eating when I'm satisfied, I'd be able to change this pattern. How do I change this pattern to feel better in my body and for my long-term well-being, but not at a cost to myself? So I think this is such a good question, because so many of us eat not for hunger. We're eating to comfort ourselves. We're eating to soothe ourselves. Now, you see me right now in a smaller body. I still do this. I just choose different foods, right? But this is something that I am actively working on as well, and just noticing and recognizing, okay, like I'm still comfort eating in the evenings. So let's look at why that is. So the first thing that I want to say in the context of food is, when we are little and we do not get the love and the support and the comfort that we need, and all point to our lives, but just for the purposes of like the work that I tend to do, we have to meet our needs some way. We need that comfort, like it's a primal human need. We need to be comforted. And for a lot of us, the only thing that we have available is food. Even in a world where our needs are generally being met, as a society, oh, you feel sad, have some sweets. Oh, you've had a breakup, have the ice cream and the wine. Oh, it's your period, have some chocolate. Although chocolate around your period is quite good because of the magnesium. But we are constantly bombarded with food being the answer to feeling shit or not feeling the way we want to feel, or even food as an answer to celebration. Oh, this has gone well, let's crack open the champagne. Oh, it's your birthday, let's have a cake. And I'm not saying any of this is bad, but a lot of us have these very, very strong associations between food and emotion. And we have to deal, oh, there's the pen gone. We have to deal with this first, because all the time we've got these really strong patterns, and a lot of the time they are survival patterns. Like we learn that in order to feel okay, we need the food. It's like an addiction. It is an addiction. You can't just be like, right, I'm just going to eat keto now. I'm just going to eat 2 meals a day. I'm just going to go on this diet and it's going to be fine, because you've got these patterns over here absolutely fighting for their life that is going to stop you. And so with this person, and bearing in mind that we do work together one-on-one and in my group, so I get it. But with this person, it's like, what is the stuff? What is the stuff that is asking to be looked at that you aren't looking at and are instead soothing yourself with food around? Because like the awareness is so good. Like I'm eating to silence my feelings and calm my nervous system out of boredom and restlessness past the point of being full. And I would say it probably isn't boredom. It probably is restlessness and that discomfort. And so what we want to do is we want to work with the discomfort. We want to work with the stuff that's there, because the more you can move that out of the way, the less you need the food for comfort. Because otherwise you're just fighting it. And it's not that you're fighting a losing battle. You just make it harder for yourself, because you're constantly fighting this battle of, I'm not going to eat. And there's your body going, I need this food in order to survive because I fill in the blank. So that's the first thing. And I really, really think this with food, like we've got to get to the crux of, why is food my comfort? What is it giving to me? And in terms of getting really clear on this, I would look at, okay, what are the points in the day where I eat past the point of being full? Like, am I doing it all throughout the day? Am I doing it at certain points during the day? Like, I can take or leave most foods all day long, but it gets to the evening and I'm like, oh, I just want something sweet to eat. Oh, I just want this. I just want that. And it's just checking in on that of like, well, what's going on here? So just for you, pinpointing, okay, well, what are the points in time of the day where I want to eat more? So that's your first bit of detective work. And then the second bit of detective work is, what are the days when I feel like I want to eat more than others? What's happened in my day? Who have I had conversations with? Who have I been speaking to? Who have I been thinking about? You know, so this person has a challenging relationship with her mum. Is it that, like, you know, we're about to have a meeting with a mum, or we've had a conversation with mum, or we're thinking about mum, and then all of a sudden we're knee deep in some kind of food? Okay. Because the thought is, if I could just listen to my body and stop eating when I'm satisfied, yeah, great. But it's not why you're eating, because you've already said that you eat when you're past full. So why is food the crutch? And that was probably an easy one to answer. But where does it become so important? And then those points are the things to hone in around and look at, so that we can resolve those patterns. So I'm going to share a little bit about what I've realized about myself recently. So I've had this great story that my husband snores and he twitches. And so what I need to do is I need to have my own bedroom, and I go, and I'm an introvert. So at the end of the day, it's lovely to go and have some time to myself. So I go and have some time to myself. And that is when I wind down. And actually, that's just when I go and spend absolutely frigging ages on social media. But that's when I go and wind down. And I like to take something up to bed to eat with me, and that's just nice. And that's what I do. And I realized recently that I'm kind of repeating this childhood pattern of, in an evening, I used to feel lonely and on my own. So we grew up in a house where mum and dad would be in the living room, and we had what we called the playroom. And my sisters were younger than me. They would have gone to bed and I was on my own. And night after night after night, the kitchen was next to the playroom. And I would just raid the kitchen and I would just eat and eat and eat and eat and eat. And my mum and dad were on the other side of the house in the living room. I mean, whether they could hear me or not, they just let me get on with it, right? And that's what I did. And it's almost like that food was the way to fill that deep, deep loneliness of, no one understands me. I don't belong here. I'm not loved. I'm not wanted. I'm not cared for. Like, this is shit. Not that I necessarily understood all of that at that time. And so I'm just going to eat. And so I realized recently of like, yes, it is inconvenient that Nat does snore and he does twitch. Like, these things are all real. But actually, am I just replicating that I need to be lonely at night and I need to comfort myself, rather than working through the discomfort of, I'm going to let someone hold me and support me in the evening when I feel at my worst? And really leaning into that. And we haven't done it loads. It was like, we're going to go to bed together. We're going to sit and read like proper grown-ups that sit and read in bed rather than just like launch into their phones. And then we're going to go to sleep together, feeling comforted, feeling supported. And I was quite honest with my husband. I said, I recognize that this is something that I need to do. I said, but I feel like in the process of doing that, I said, I think I'm going to get really sad. I said, I think literally just the process of being held and supported at night, I said, I think it's going to really do something. I think it's, it's really going to bring some stuff up. And it did. We were sat there in bed and he joked and he was like, well, you're not crying yet. And about 15 minutes later, I was like, I'm ready to cry now. I'm ready to cry now. Please, will you hold me? And it was just really, really lovely. But we have to be onto ourselves around like, what are the behaviors we are doing? What are the patterns that we have? Why have we got them? What do they link back to? And then what is here now asking us to resolve and heal itself? Because all the time there's that real link into food. The link into food is just going to be there, right? So yes, eating to silence your feelings. Yes, eating to calm your nervous system. This lovely person that has asked the question, you've got all the tools that you need to feel your feelings and calm your nervous system. And so my challenge to you is around leaning into that discomfort, seeing what happens. I'm here to support you, and just seeing what happens. What happens if you stay with that discomfort? And in the process of being with all of this, can you just be kind to yourself that you are eating more? And if you're deeply bothered about weight gain, can you find some other stuff to eat that is different to what you're eating right now? I mean, we're not going to get excited by celery and carrot sticks, but can there be something that you can get on board with eating and enjoying while you work through and resolve this pattern? And then the last thing that I want to say about this, and I'm just going to caveat with, this is not my area of expertise. I just happen to be listening to a book on Audible about it at the moment. So I'm listening to a book at the moment by, I don't know her name, I'm going to have to look, but it's called Fast Like a Girl. And I listened to her on a podcast the other day. Anyway, she talks about, we don't need to talk about fasting because I don't think that's necessarily helpful to this conversation. But the female hormone cycle, whether you are like have a normal cycle or an irregular cycle, or you're perimenopausal or you're menopausal, Dr. Mindy Pelz is her name, surname spelled Pelz. our hormones do different things throughout the month, and actually you can eat in accordance with those hormones to support your body optimally. And so there might also be some stuff to look at around, well, where am I at in my cycle? What is it that my body needs to function optimally at this point? And if I feed myself optimally at this point, do I feel better? Do I have less cravings? And actually, does my weight regulate itself a little bit more? It's been very interesting for me to like read through and look at it. About points in the month where you might have less carbohydrate and more carbohydrate, and some of them are fairly obvious because like the week before, obviously we want to eat all the food, and like, yes, the hormone evidence does support that. But then there's a point in the middle of the cycle, and I wanted to talk about this because it comes back to the exercise as well. So on like days 11 to 15, roughly, if you have a 28-day cycle, this is when our testosterone raises, and our testosterone raises because this is the point in time when we're meant to like get horny so we can have babies. But that is the point in our cycle where we are the strongest and the most capable and the most powerful. So if you were going to look at it alongside your cycle, that might be the point in time where you might be like, okay, well, I'm going to try doing a little bit of weight training this week and see what happens. And then like the 10 days before your period starts, you might be like, however you feel, you'd be like, I'm just going to stick to walking at this time, walking and nourishing and taking care of myself. So I'm actually working with my natural rhythm. So I hope that is helpful. Like we can start listening to our body and eating when we're satisfied, and when we haven't got this survival pattern running the show that's like, you need to eat to feel better or you're going to die. Because that's a big, big thing to be up against. So I hope that is super helpful. Come back to me if you've got any follow-ups on that. And so they are the questions. Have you got any questions? No? Okay, great. So that is going to be our Q&A for this month. Is there anything that you want to say? No. So that is going to be our Q&A for this month. I hope this is helpful. I know it's a little bit outside the parameters of what I normally talk about. But who knew? I'm an exercise and nutrition person as well. So let me know have your questions for next time. It'll be the last Wednesday in September at 5, and I will see you guys then. Have a lovely rest of your summer. Take care.